Welcome to Life Turns, where stories about love, family, and heartbreak come alive. Today, I want to share a chapter of my life that still makes my heart ache every time I think about it. This isn't just about missing a special event. It's about what it means when the people you love the most choose someone else over you, and the wound it leaves behind. I had worked for years toward one dream, to finally walk across that stage and hold my graduation diploma in my hands. Late nights studying, endless projects, sacrifices that I thought my parents would be proud of. I imagined the moment so many times, me looking into the crowd, searching for their faces, and seeing their proud smiles as I shook the principal's hand. But life doesn't always give us the moments we hope for. On the morning of my graduation, I woke up nervous but excited. My gown was hanging neatly on the door, the cap carefully placed on the dresser. I even laid out my shoes the night before, like a little kid waiting for Christmas morning. I thought about my parents sitting in the audience, my mom probably crying, and my dad clapping harder than anyone else. But as I came down for breakfast, the kitchen felt different. Quiet. Heavy. Almost like something wasn't right. My mom and dad were sitting at the table, but instead of looking at me with excitement, they looked uncomfortable, almost guilty. My sister, Emily, sat with them, and she had a sparkle in her eyes. She was already in her dance outfit, her hair tied up perfectly. I should have noticed the signs, but I didn't want to believe what was coming. I smiled and said, "Big day today, huh?" But the silence that followed was deafening. Then my dad cleared his throat and said, "Sweetheart, we need to talk." My stomach dropped instantly. He went on, "Emily has her big recital today. It's at the same time as your graduation, and we can't be in two places at once." I felt the air leave my lungs. I stared at them, waiting for them to say, "Of course, we'll be at your graduation, it only happens once in your life." But instead, my mom put her hand over mine and whispered, "We've decided to go to Emily's recital. She needs us there. Dance has been her whole world, and this is her big moment." I couldn't even speak at first. My throat closed up, and my chest burned. "What about me?" I finally managed to say. "This is my graduation. Don't I matter?" Emily looked down, clearly uncomfortable, but she didn't say anything. "And my parents?" They just sat there, their silence telling me everything I needed to know. My mom said softly, "We'll celebrate with you later. But Emily needs us today." I went upstairs without another word, my vision blurred with tears. I stared at my graduation gown, and it no longer looked like a symbol of success. It looked like a cruel reminder that no matter what I achieved, I would always come second to my sister. Always. When I finally walked into the school auditorium later that day, I saw other students' families waving, clapping, holding cameras and flowers. Parents shouting their children's names proudly. And me? My row was empty. My parents' seats were cold and untouched. I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my life. I walked across that stage with a fake smile, but inside, I was crumbling. I didn't hear the applause. I didn't hear my name being called. All I heard was the silence of the people who should have been there. The people who chose someone else over me. That night, when I came home, they were full of excitement. "Emily was amazing," my mom said. "You should have seen her twirl." The audience gave her a standing ovation. My dad added, "We recorded it for you." They didn't even ask me how my graduation went until much later, as if it were just a small side note in the day. I went to my room, shut the door, and cried harder than I had in years. It wasn't about the ceremony. It wasn't about the diploma. It was about the message they sent me loud and clear: Emily was worth showing up for. I wasn't. That wound stayed with me. Even years later, when people talk about their parents being at their graduations, cheering, crying, hugging them afterward, I have nothing to say. My memory is of an empty seat and a broken heart. And though I've tried to move past it, the pain lingers, like a scar that never fades. The days after graduation were supposed to feel like a celebration. My friends talked about family dinners, cake, balloons, and pictures with proud parents. Social media was flooded with graduation photos, smiling faces holding diplomas, parents hugging their kids tightly. And me? I didn't post a single photo. Every time I looked at my own pictures, the emptiness behind me screamed louder than anything else. I couldn't bring myself to pretend that it had been a perfect day. My parents, meanwhile, carried on as if nothing serious had happened. They said, "We'll make it up to you," and planned a little dinner at home. But the truth is, the damage was already done. No meal, no belated celebration could replace the memory I never got. They decorated the table with balloons, and my mom baked my favorite cake. My dad even gave a little toast about how proud they were. But when I looked into their eyes, I saw guilt trying to masquerade as joy. I wanted to scream, "Where were you when it mattered? Where were you when I needed you most?" But I stayed silent, pushing the food around my plate. It felt like I was being asked to smile and be grateful for leftovers, while my sister had already been served the main course. Emily, to her credit, tried to comfort me. She slipped into my room later that night and said, "I'm sorry. I told them they should go to your graduation, but they wouldn't listen. They said my recital was more important." She looked down, ashamed, but the words didn't make me feel any better. It wasn't her fault, but hearing her admit that my parents had chosen, without hesitation, just ripped the wound open again. What hurt the most wasn't that they missed my ceremony. It was that they made it so clear who they valued more. It wasn't just one event. It was years of small choices, little decisions where Emily was always the star, the priority, the one worth rearranging everything for. And me? I was expected to be understanding, to quietly accept the role of the forgotten child. I started to pull away. Family dinners became shorter. Conversations became fewer. I spent more time with my friends, more time locked in my room, and less time trying to earn the approval that I realized might never come. My parents noticed, of course, but they didn't really address it. Instead, they kept showering Emily with attention, attending every single one of her recitals, competitions, and showcases, while my achievements sat in the shadows. One day, a few weeks after graduation, I overheard my mom talking to a neighbor. She said, "We're so proud of Emily, she has such talent, such a future in dance." The neighbor asked about me, and my mom said, "Oh yes, she graduated. We're proud of her too." The way she said it, so casual, like a footnote, broke me in ways I can't explain. I began to question my worth. Was I not good enough? Was my hard work invisible? Did I have to twirl on a stage in order to be noticed? The comparisons ate away at me, and bitterness started to replace the love I once felt so deeply for my parents. Then came the final blow. A few months later, I received my acceptance letter into a college I had worked so hard to get into. I was overjoyed, tears streaming down my face as I read the words "Congratulations." I rushed downstairs to tell my parents, hoping, just this once, that they would beam with pride. But before I could even finish, Emily burst in with exciting news. She had been chosen to perform in a state-level competition. My parents immediately jumped up, hugged her, and showered her with praise. And me? I just stood there, holding my letter, invisible again. My dad turned to me eventually and said, "That's great, honey," before turning back to Emily's plans. The letter slipped from my hands as I realized nothing would ever be enough to earn the spotlight in their eyes. That night, lying in bed, I promised myself something. If my parents couldn't see my worth, I would prove it not for them, but for me. I decided I would carry the pain, but I would also turn it into fuel. I would work harder, shine brighter, and succeed in ways that couldn't be ignored. But deep inside, I knew the little girl who once dreamed of her parents cheering at her graduation had died the moment they chose not to show up. The years that followed were both the hardest and the most defining of my life. Leaving for college wasn't just about education, it was my escape. For the first time, I was free from the constant comparisons, free from the empty chairs and forced smiles. I remember the night before I left home. My parents hugged me quickly, told me to study hard, and then rushed Emily to another rehearsal. Their goodbye felt more like an afterthought than a heartfelt moment. And yet, as the car pulled away from the driveway, I looked back one last time and whispered to myself, I'm going to be okay, even without them. College was a world of challenges, but it was also where I learned who I was without the shadow of my sister. I poured my energy into my studies, joined clubs, made friends who valued me for me, not for what stage I stood on or what spotlight I held. Each success, each small victory, felt like a step toward healing. I still carried the pain, but now it was shaping me into someone stronger. I'll never forget the day I received my first academic award in college. As I stood on the stage, I scanned the crowd out of habit, expecting emptiness. But this time, I wasn't looking for my parents. I was looking at friends who cheered like family. I realized in that moment that sometimes, the people we expect to support us won't, but the world is still full of others who will. That lesson became my anchor. Meanwhile, my relationship with my parents grew distant. Phone calls were rare, and when they did happen, the conversations circled around Emily, her competitions, her victories, her future in dance. They rarely asked about my classes or my projects. At first, it hurt deeply, but slowly, I stopped expecting anything. It was easier to carry no expectations than to be disappointed again and again. Years passed, and life moved forward. I graduated college with honors. And even though my parents didn't attend that ceremony either, I didn't break this time. I celebrated with friends, I framed my diploma myself, and I promised never to let their absence dim my achievements again. My career took off sooner than I had dreamed. I landed a job that challenged me, gave me independence, and slowly, piece by piece, I began to build the life I had always imagined. Every milestone I reached, my first apartment, my first promotion, my first published project, I clapped for myself. I learned to be my own cheerleader. But deep inside, there was still a scar. A quiet longing for my parents to one day see me, truly see me. That moment came years later, in the most unexpected way. One summer, I was invited to give a speech at a national conference for young professionals. It was a huge honor, and my name was listed among some incredible people. To my surprise, Emily showed up in the audience. She had grown too, and her dance career had taken her in different directions. After my speech, she came up with tears in her eyes and said, "I always knew you were amazing. I'm sorry it took Mom and Dad so long to see it." Later that evening, my parents called me. They had watched the recording online, and for the first time in years, their voices were filled with pride. My dad said, "We didn't realize how much we hurt you back then. We thought Emily needed us more, but we see now how wrong we were." My mom's voice cracked as she added, "You've become someone incredible, and we're sorry we weren't there when you needed us most." The apology was late, years too late, but hearing it still made something inside me soften. The wound would never completely disappear, but maybe it didn't need to. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past, but about letting go of its power over me. I told them, "I don't need you to make up for the past. I just need you to be here now." And in that moment, I felt a weight lift. For the first time, my voice mattered. The pain of my graduation will always be a part of me, but so will the strength it gave me. It taught me that sometimes the people who are supposed to lift us up will let us down, but that doesn't mean we aren't worthy. It means we must learn to lift ourselves. If there's one thing I've carried with me all these years, it's this: your worth isn't defined by who claps for you. It's defined by how loudly you clap for yourself when the world is silent. And now, whenever I think back to that empty chair at my graduation, I don't see loss anymore. I see the beginning of a journey that made me who I am today, stronger, wiser, and no longer afraid to stand alone.